Using this poorly designed yearbook end page, let me take you back to the year 2009. In my innocent young eyes, the biggest event of the year was the anniversary of a fictional character. The SpongeBob SquarePants franchise was 10 years old, and Nickelodeon treated it like a humongous deal, giving it a full line of merchandise and a non-stop weekend-long marathon that brought great sorrow to those who watched the George Lopez show on Nick at Night. The year-long celebration ended with Truth or Square, an hour-long special that was advertised as being a deep dive into our favorite deep-sea creatures that would spill all of their secrets. Metaphorically speaking, that is. They weren't going to actually cut them open and spill all their organs because that is disgusting. There wasn't anything that I was more excited for that fall. I got one of the weird blocky Burger King toys, the pretty decent video game adaptation, the DVD with the bizarre faded cover art, and eagerly awaited the day of November 6th. And when that faithful day came, I was disappointed. The episode ended up being a ratings trap filled with boring and painfully long live-action celebrity cameos. I mean, why would they even include these awkward segments when everyone just wanted to see them focus on the cartoon? Who would decide to include something like that? I don't really want to do this, but if I'm going down, I'm taking someone down with me.
Hey guy, PieGuyRulz here.
Please help me review Truth or Square.
Oh, Nick, of course not. I would never do that again. Do you even remember what happened the last time you asked me to talk about that episode with you?
Traumatic memories. So, as I was saying before... Hey, wait a minute. He hung up on me while I was flashing back.
NICKtendo.
My reception to Truth or Square wasn't too warm initially, but over time, I've grown a very strange fascination towards it. I certainly get why it's seen as one of the worst episodes by fans, but through a certain lens, I think it could be one of the most entertaining and intriguing episodes in such a tightly monitored franchise. To begin, if you're even going to watch this episode, you already have 3 different options of doing so. There's the 51-minute original airing, a rerun exclusive version that cuts the special down to 2 22-minute episodes, and the hour-long extended cut, which I'll be reviewing for this video. I found the idea of there being multiple versions of the same SpongeBob episode to be an interesting concept, and that rings true here. I believe that the longer the cut, the more live-action segments are included, though only 2 of the 3 versions are officially available. You can find the extended cut on the Specials DVD and as a part of Season 6's DVD releases, and the original airing on newer physical and digital releases. As far as I can tell, ever since it was taken off of Netflix, the 2-part version can't be watched in North America. The extended cut is also only available in standard definition, and for whatever reason, the original airing is in HD on iTunes and Amazon, but is poorly cropped into a 4:3 ratio. This was the first SpongeBob episode to be produced in widescreen, though the series wouldn't make the proper jump to HD until 3 years later. Seeing the Season 6 animation style in slightly greater detail makes the SpongeBob segments of this episode a heck of a lot more noteworthy, because there really isn't much to them. Truth or Square is the closest that the series has gotten to having a bottle episode. While preparing for the 11th anniversary of the Krusty Krab, the crew is accidentally locked inside the restaurant's freezer and have to navigate through its air ducts to escape. The characters spend most of their time crawling through identical-looking ventilation, so most of the meat of the episode is found in flashback sequences. And frankly, they're its most disappointing aspect. Most of the montages either just repeat the same gags several times with unoriginal variations, or stretch a joke out for a solid minute. This could have been a pretty funny fake clip show episode if they actually ran with the concept, but the flashbacks just feel like they're here to waste time. Moments like SpongeBob moving in next to Squidward is an important one for the character, but it's shown to us in such a mundane manner. I mean, if you wanted to see SpongeBob as a fetus in his mother's womb, then this is the episode for you. Here's a fun fact about that scene from the SpongeBob Wiki. They say that if a baby was able to pull out its umbilical cord in real life, it would die because the cord acts as an oxygen tube? Well, that fact wasn't very fun at all. I could excuse the boring flashbacks if there was much of a plot to speak of, but sadly, Truth or Square is focused more on its gags than telling an actually interesting story. The characters just meander around for most of the episode. You could put most of the sequences in any order, and it wouldn't ruin any of the story's progression. The characters probably could have left the air ducts at any time, as there's barely any build up to their great escape. Given that this is a Season 6 episode, the humor just comes from the characters being overly annoying, Squidward getting tortured, lifeless slapstick, or one of those wordy anti-jokes that are kind of funny, but also kind of stupid.
SpongeBob!
Yes, sir?
I'm putting you in charge of decorations.
Oh, but Mr. Krabs,
Yes, boy.
I thought you said I would be in charge of decorations.
What? But you are.
I am?
This isn't to say that there aren't any good animated comedic bits at all, but you have to sit through minutes of uninspired banter and plotting to dig them up.
I spent a lifetime working in this restaurant, and I know there's only one way out of here. A high school diploma?
This episode also suffers from some odd technical oversights that always take me out of the experience. Like whenever the Krusty Krab is seen in establishing shots, it's surrounded by a crowd, but half an hour in, when we return to it, the crowd is gone. Later, the characters hear the crowd chanting outside, but when they finally escape the ducks, the crowd is gone once again. At one point, Mr. Krabs splits off from the rest of the group, and after he appears in one of SpongeBob's flashbacks, he's just suddenly back with the rest of the gang. We never see him after the initial split up, so it's just like they forgot about Mr. Krabs altogether and just conveniently threw him back in here. The joke behind one flashback doesn't even make any sense because of the background characters it includes. SpongeBob asks the Krusty crew if they remember when he got married to Sandy, something that they all react to with surprise. The marriage turns out to have been part of a play, which is already a lame way to tease the fans, but both Mr. Krabs and Patrick were at the wedding and knew that it was all an act. So why were they so surprised when SpongeBob first brought this up? If I have to give the plot some semblance of credit, there's kind of a character arc for SpongeBob. Throughout it all, we see how much he loves the Krusty Krab and everything that it stands for, and he's able to use his passion for the restaurant to rally the town together in celebration. This element isn't a big part of the episode, but I think it helps the ending feel a bit more earned. Flashbacks aren't the only method that Truth or Square uses to fill up its time. It's also got 6 different musical numbers, but these are actually pretty good. For the first time in SpongeBob history, the classic intro is completely replaced by a stop-motion rendition, animated by Screen Novelties, and accompanied by a decent CeeLo Green cover. Putting aside the unnecessarily creepy animatronic puppet that is the first thing you see here, the way this intro reworks the lyrics and visuals from the classic theme song is literally out of this world. For a 45-second segment, its look is very bouncy and stylized, and it's complete with seamless integration of live-action footage and locations. Early on, we also get a number that's up there with some of my favorites in the series' history. Like The Best Day Ever and Don't Be a Jerk, It's Christmas, a day like this was written for an album, but was then inserted into an episode. And of these 3, that one's gotta be my favorite. It's a fast-paced, peppy pop song, but the snappy lyrics work so well with the backing vocals and instrumentation. The montage of SpongeBob getting ready for work that plays alongside it is also very well storyboarded, including lots of memorable set pieces that make the song's minute-and-a-half runtime fly by.
Here's a day that couldn't get much better. It is the greatest that's ever been. It's so cool, I ought to wear it sweater just to hold on to that warm feeling.
There's a couple other time-filling montages in the episode, a few even being flashbacks, but they all have really good stock music backing them up. I know that's not a high compliment, but the use of 1920s style jazz pieces makes the soundtrack feel larger than life, and helps to convey the special's retro anniversary motif. You can also see this in the Flickering Funny segment, a classic black and white Disney and Fleischer takeoff that doesn't really have a point with its parody or a particularly great song accompanying it, but it gets by with its charming and authentic art direction. The way that sequences in Truth or Square pay tribute to classic animation styles are leagues better than the attempts in Atlantis Squarepantis. I'm not fond of its over-animated retro video game throwback and a Parappa the Rapper inspired blend of 2D and 3D. There's nice artwork from time to time, but throwing Photoshop filters over the characters was a lazy way to achieve half of the looks that they were going for. On the other hand, Truth or Square's UPA-inspired Krabby Patty commercial has art direction from industry legend Craig Kellman, known for designing characters such as Spider-Ham from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Jim from the Powerpuff Girls. Oh, and he also did the ending to Sponge Out of Water too. This guy's style is built for end credits to modern animated movies. This here is a great example of stylized, limited animation, though the advertisement itself comes out of nowhere within the episode. I mean, the characters fall through some tubes, and suddenly, this video is sponsored by Amino Stories. I thought that it would be a good idea to discuss SpongeBob's new 20th anniversary special, especially with how many similarities it holds to what I'm covering today. But I didn't want to make an entirely separate video dedicated to just my first impressions. Luckily, the story feature on the Amino app has given a home to my brief reviews and countdowns. To watch the exclusive videos that I've created for them, click the link in the description or pinned comment to download the Amino app and search NICKtendo reviews to find my account. It would help me out a lot if you would follow me, view my stories, and hit that bell icon to be notified whenever I upload something new to the app. Find me on Amino today so you don't have to flash back to this moment later. So far, we've covered the animated portion of Truth or Square, but that only makes up 32 minutes of the hour-long cut. The remaining 24 minutes chronicle the adventures of recurring series host Patchy the Pirate, as he breaks into Nickelodeon studios, requests and kidnaps guest stars to appear on his SpongeBob anniversary extravaganza, and then gets eaten by a poorly composited whale puppet. Now, there are some genuine bright spots throughout all of this. There's a lot of cool posters and animation cells lining the interior of the casting room Patchy sits in, as I'm pretty sure they filmed most of this in the SpongeBob writer's room, or at least a writer's office. Pink has a really good, if random, musical number that ends with her band jumping into the ocean for no reason, and there's a somewhat funny fake behind-the-scenes reel with delivery that reminds me a little too much of YouTube cartoon fact videos.
You know, like any great work of art, SpongeBob didn't just appear out of nowhere. He started out as a thought.
But similar to the rest of the special, these highlights are just as few and far between. In his previous appearances, Patchy the Pirate has been a generally enjoyable distraction, with a few of his random low-budget adventures even being better than some of the cartoons that surround them. He had a great back and forth with Potty, and always got what he deserved for trying to ruin everyone else's fun. But those were just 7-minute segments. Truth or Square kicks it up a notch, and has over 2 full episodes of Patchy, and they are truly terrible. And also the reason why I love this episode. The term guilty pleasure is not one I closely associate with SpongeBob. How much I enjoy an episode usually comes down to how much it makes me laugh or entertains me. Typically, the comedy is simple enough that it can appeal to any person of any age. So whether or not I enjoyed an episode ironically is usually not something I think about when watching this specific show. The humor in the rest of Patchy's appearances tended to be rather cheesy, but there was always a blatant sense of self-awareness. In Truth or Square, he's still quite silly, but it's always so straight. For a while, there's few wacky effects or characters, as these segments rely on celebrity cameos to keep things entertaining. The problem is that half of these guest stars are literally phoning it in, and don't have much room to actually act.
Where's my bagel? Bagel!
Half of them appear on phone calls in their offices, and others, like Robin Williams, are given nothing to work with. There's nearly 2.5 minutes of Williams and Patchy bumbling around some hallways, and you can feel the awkwardness and uncertainty in both of their performances.
Wait a minute, I know this place. This is where careers come to die!
Don't get me wrong, there were so many terrible choices made here, but somebody out there thought all of this was a good idea. They let Ricky Gervais fumble his way through the opening narration.
10 years ago, a mere 10 years later, 10 years ago I said that, 10 years, it's 10 years ago. It's 10 years ago.
They gave a whole guest spot to a cigar-smoking dog puppet from Conan O'Brien's talk show.
Sure, of course. I'm sure it's a great script. 3, 2, 1. For me to poop on!
They couldn't get a stable tripod for Will Ferrell's cameo.
No way!
I don't know if my sense of humor is just terrible enough that I can get some ironic enjoyment out of this episode, but to me it's just one of those things that's so terrible that it becomes funny. I don't even think this opinion is necessarily driven completely by nostalgia, as I remember enjoying the video game based off of this special more than the special itself. I just think that over the years, the bar for what I consider funny has only gotten lower and lower. There are certainly elements here that are bad any way that you look at them, but Truth or Square is always trying something new, whether it be a new animation style or bizarre creative decision. The good stuff can be legitimately good, and the bad stuff is wrapped up in so much genuine stupidity that it actually becomes really funny. There's barely any story to follow, any kind of consistent quality, or legitimate reason for this to have been more than an 11-minute episode, but I can kinda let all that slide because of how entertaining it is. For me, it's still difficult to enjoy the boringly straightforward flashbacks, since they don't include the random pop culture references to Johnny Depp and Fergie that no one in the target audience will understand.
Back to the old Rolodex. Bo Derek, Bo Diddley, Eddie Deason. Eddie Deason.
Hey, when do we film?
This way, sir.
Nevertheless, I'm still discovering new things about the episode that add to my enjoyment, like how you can see Patchy's beard falling off at the beginning, or how in the UK, the stop-motion intro was filmed differently to match the cultural differences between regions. Entertaining stuff is here. You might just have to dig a little deeper, or approach this with a certain mindset. I'm extremely curious about whether or not anyone in my audience shares the odd opinions that I put forward today, so don't be afraid to discuss them with me in the comments or on my Twitter. Based on the way that I present myself today, I have no right to judge. For better or worse, there's nothing like this special in the SpongeBob franchise. Or at least there wasn't when I initially conceived this video. I would never consider Truth or Square to be one of my favorites. By all means, it's still a terrible episode, but to me, it's an episode that I truly love. Play me out, Squidward's rendition of Beautiful Dreamer.
La-da-dee, la-da-dum, la-da-dee, la-da-dee. Tempo, tempo!